All right, welcome. So in the lesson before this one, we learned how to take geometry, cut holes in it, fill it back in with other objects. So today we're going to take that idea and push it twice as ridiculous. So instead of doing two different models, we're doing five actually. We're replacing five different things. And really this lesson is to kind of show you how far we can go with replacing objects and separating geometry and how ridiculous this can get, and which obviously will allow you to do a bunch of crazy things. So let's do it. I am in a nice blank project. And again, just go ahead, Shift A, add a plane. And we're head straight to geometry nodes. In this case, we're going to delete this one. We're going to go ahead, delete this one, and open up a new window. This orientation is going to be better for this particular design. So I'm going to click on this button, go to geometry nodes, I'm going to hit in. Now that we have this plane here, I'm going to click new. So now we have these strings, and of course, we go ahead and delete that input, and we're going to go Shift A, search, and get in a grid. Simple stuff so far, nothing entirely crazy. So here on the size, we're going to click and drag, and this time we're going to do 10. We're not going to make it super big. And then on the vertices, let's go, I like to watch it happen in wireframe view. So let's go on the vertices and give it 20. Here we go. This is what we're working with. Now let's go ahead and implement our displacement first. So let's go and get in our gatekeeper, Mr. Set Position. Let's go and get that combine XYZ, which allows us to make that displacement only displace on the Z, which we need to get a vector math, switch it to multiply, plug that into the Z, and then we're going to get our wave, and then plug that color into the top vector. And then we can see, okay, now we have some displacement going. We're going to go and bring our scale to 0.1, and then we're going to bring our detail to 0. And our actually, no, we'll keep it. We'll keep that there. In my original, I think it looked better. Now we can go from bands to, see how it's bands right now? This is bands. We're going to go to rings, and then this is X, like you can, on this wave texture, you can specify which direction you want it to go. In our case, we're going to do spherical, which is the same as Z in this case, but it's okay. And then our phase offset is a fun little animation. Now, because we're using the wave texture, animating this in a loop is going to be incredibly easy. I'm going to go ahead and bring my displacement down and then bring some distortion in. And this is how we're going to animate all of our objects. But speaking of objects, we need some objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this guy up here, GEO, and then we're going to hide him for now. And let's get 4 objects. We need to go ahead and get in a circle. And then right here in the add circle settings, we need to do 64 to make it nice and good. Nice and good? Is that a good thing to say? I don't know. And then right here on Ngon, or it said nothing, we're going to do Ngon to fill it with some geometry. And let's just bring it over here out of the way. I'm going to hit the period key to go to the center here, and then I'm going to hit Shift D, bring him over here. So on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, and then hit I to inset it, right? And then this will be how thick we want the walls of our cylinder in this particular animation to be. So we'll just select that. I'm going to hit X and click faces. But if you're, while still being in edit mode, you can click on this button here and select this edge, hold down Alt. So you can click this one, but click there when you hold down Alt, and you can edit it later. It's technically not non-destructive. Well, I guess the non-destructive wouldn't be the word. It's just editable. Then what we can do is add modifier, solidify, and then just bring it up like this. And then again, if I go to edit mode, you can make it thicker or thinner based on this. And then I'm going to go ahead and get in a bevel node here in the modifiers, and then just bring it to however you want it to be, and then shade smooth. Let's go ahead and get 2 more here. So Shift A, get a plane, bring it over, and then Shift D, get another one, and we're gonna do the same dance. I'm gonna hit Tab, I'm gonna hit I to give it some thickness, X, faces, and then we can hold down Alt again so that we can select this, right? And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold down Shift, click this guy, this guy, this guy, and then click him last, Control L, and then you can do copy modifiers, and it's gonna give that modifier to everything. And then I'm just gonna right click, I'm gonna highlight them all in Shade Smooth. And then of course, this guy is always editable, and this guy is always editable. So now we have that. Let's go ahead and title them. Titling them is gonna be pretty convenient for this particular project. So I'm gonna call him Cube H for cube hole, and then we're gonna call him Cube, and then here we're gonna call him Tube, Tube H, and Tube. All right, these are our particles that we're making exterior to geometry nodes because we wanted to cut holes in 2 of them. So we'll go back to Geo, enable him, and we can go ahead and now place objects within here. So we'll go back to geometry nodes and get, of course, a instance on points. So inst instance on points, plug it there. I'm gonna highlight this and bring it over here because I already know there's a lot that's gonna be done here now. So we're gonna go and right up here, let's go ahead and just bring in cube. You can drag it straight from the outliner and then plug geometry into instance, and boom, he's here. So now that these are here, what I wanna do actually is I'm gonna go ahead and get a value node, and he's gonna be used quite a bit in this project. So I'm gonna plug him right into scale and then bring them up. I'm gonna hit the tilde key to go to the top just to get them exactly where I want them to be. That's probably a good spacing. Okay, so now what I want to do is right here. So right after this set position, I want to start deleting geometry. So I'm going to hit G and move him over, and let's go ahead and get that separate geometry, that gatekeeper node. So separate geometry right here, and this time we're going to use a goodness gracious, can't spell the word random value, and switch it to Boolean. Now you might be thinking like Boolean, that operation that cuts holes into things using other objects. This Boolean, all it means in this case is it gives you a single slider and 1 little seed value. That's what Boolean means in here. It doesn't mean it's like an operator that does whatever, because this random value does more than work with the separate geometry. So as far as I know, Boolean in this context does not talk about cutting holes into things. That being said, we're going to set Boolean to 0.5 to be in the exact middle and plug that into selection, and that will delete exactly half of the cubes we have, which of course we learned in the last lesson. That allows us to use this inverted. So I'm actually going to use this inverted here just for he goes to the bottom, the other one's going to go to the top. That's just an organizational thing. So I'm going to take this instance on points and I'm going to hit Shift D and bring them up. I'm going to take this value here, telling it how big to make those cubes. I'm going to plug it into that scale. On this object info, I'm going to hit Shift D, and instead of cube, we'll use cube H. Plug that into instance, and then right here in this selection, see this inverted means, okay, that geometry, let's use the inverted one to fill in those holes. And of course, the last node we need is a join geometry. And that is going to fill that in. A lot of ridiculousness here. So let's talk about what we have right now, just as a little regroup, a little recap. These nodes here, this grid right here, he tells us how the housing, he is the geometry, right? So he stands alone. These nodes right here, these exist to enable displacement, right? Set position, and anything connected to that is our displacement. We then have our random value. So this random value is working with this separate geometry. So if we play with it, the probability, we're showing how much of each, but we're going to do 0.5 to show an equal amount of each thing. And it's randomly taking things away. It's a random value node. It's randomly separating the geometry around that. And now we have access to each of those, right? This value node is depicting how big everything is going to be. And then we have our objects here, the cube and the cube hole. And of course, our instance on points. Now we have another opportunity available to us. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go ahead and highlight these guys, move them down. I'm going to highlight these guys and move them up because we are going to need more space for the next activity. So see these two lines right here? They represent all of these, the two separations of the geometry, but we can take that further. We can separate what's already separated. So see how they're cut in half, right? Selection here, selection here. I'm gonna hit Shift D, plug that there. And then I'm gonna plug this random value into the selection. Now it's gonna remove those, right? So I'm gonna axe that for a minute. See this, see these guys? Plug that random value into the selection and half of those whole cubes, is it half the whole? No, half of the cubes with a hole, yep. Into the selections, removing half of those. We now have a new open slot to put more geometry, put new geometry. I'm going to move him over here. So that opens up a new opportunity. So I'm going to hit Shift D on this instance on points. I'm going to plug him into the join geometry. We have a new inverted, which is all those open spaces is accessed by this inverted that we're going to plug into this instance on points. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and get a new object info so we can start implementing the tubes. And then we'll plug that into instance. And then, of course, value so that we can scale it down, right? So this is a little chaotic. So we'll explain everything later. It's a little chaotic, but it's okay. So now we have everything going on, right? And you can kind of make sense of things like, okay, this guy's operating these guys and this guy's operating these guys, right? So now we have that and we can do the same thing down here, right? See this separate geometry? We have this chord here. Let's put another separate geometry right on that green chord to open up a new slot that we'll put right above here. I mean, everything is going to get convoluted, but we will organize it. Plug that into the join geometry. We'll plug this inverted selection into points. Let's get that value into the scale, and then we'll get a new object info and get tube H, plug the geometry into instance. And then of course, there's no the separate geometry here, plug that random value into it. There we go. Now we have everything. So let's go ahead and organize this. This is a complete mess. So everything that's related to each other, just put them together, right? So each instance on points is going to have an object info that's plugged into it. So we can group those guys. Him here, him here, him right here, and then him right here. We have some separate geometry, so I'm just going to move these back so that everything is going to make sense, right? So this separate geometry, and then this separate geometry, and this scale. So this value right here controls the scale of everybody. And we have each object here. So you can see, you can play with them to see where they're at. Just like that. So it's ridiculous. But now we have all of our modules singled out here. And then this value node, he just exists to be able to have everything plugged in. So now we have that. We have 3 levels of separating our geometry. The big one here, and then the 2 over here. And then this random value is controlling all 3 and cutting them in half. That's a lot. I know. This is one of those lessons I would probably want to watch 3 times. Make sure you're following it along so that it'll make sense for you. It can get messy, so we really organized it all here. Now that we're here, we can go ahead and start playing with that last object, and here's how it looks animated. Honestly, he's a little too displaced. Last thing I want to do is put in some spheres that are going to come out of the ones with the holes. So let's find, let's see, tube hole, tube H. So let's find this tube H right here. That's going to be this string. So find the string that is connected to an instance on points that has one of the objects with the hole. So tube H, that's going to be this string here. So what I want to do is get an instance on points and just bring him over here. Just put him by himself, but let's go ahead and plug that first in here. So see this guy right here for me? Plug that into points, and then I'm going to bring him away, bring him by himself, and then I'm going to highlight these guys. I'm going to hit G and move it. One other thing you can do for organization is I'm going to hold down Shift and right click, and that's going to place these little dots. And then what you can do is I can just bring them over. I'm hitting G to move them manually. So that'll give us a nice space to it's really just to mentally understand what's going on here. So now we have this going on, an instance on points that we will plug into the Geoin geometry. Shift A, let's go ahead and search a icosphere. Let's plug the icosphere straight into the instance, and boom, he will start to show up. Let's give him some subdivisions. That's probably too many, but it's okay. And then we can bring the scale down on them as well. I'm gonna hit the tilde key. It's right above the tab key. We're gonna go to the top, and we can just kind of bring him down to be about here. And now he's down there. So when we animate it, so if I just go ahead and touch our phase offset, how do we get those instances up there? Well, in the last lesson, we talked about the transform geometry node. He is the gatekeeper node that says, okay, you can move everything that's on this line. So we're going to go ahead on the X and bring them up. Boom. We're now allowed to manipulate that. So we're going to bring these guys back a little bit just for organization. And now we need to actually displace these spheres and the line of geometry that they're sitting on. And we have it singled out right here. And it's actually not going to displace the same line that these cylinders are on. We're just going to touch that. So let's go ahead and get a set position node, plug it there. And we can go ahead and just borrow these nodes. So I'm going to highlight them. I'm going to hit Control C, come over here, Control V, and that pasted them. Or you can hit Shift D and drag them over. And then just plug that right into the offset. And then they are going to be able to do their own thing. But see how that's how dramatic it gets? We're just going to multiply that and then bring it down. We're going to bring the, right here on this wave texture, bring the detail down like this, and then detail scale at 0. So now they do that, right? We'll be able to edit that later, but this multiply will tell us, you know, how much we're allowed. Let's just do like 1, just so we can kind of see where they're located. Right there. And then you can, let's bring them here in the bottom, and then click and drag and multiply them up. And that phase offset will have them coming in and out. Now let's just go ahead, let's see, bring that multiply down a little bit. Let's just go ahead and get our camera and start to animate this here really quick. So we don't need the camera yet. Let's go ahead and animate the wave textures within this whole geometry nodes system. Remember, the wave texture is the easiest texture to loop. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to frame 0 here in the phase offset, bring it to 0, and then I'm going to hit I, go to the end, then I'm going to type in 10 asterisk pi, 10 times pi, enter, and then hit I. And now if I press play, they're going to be doing that. I'm going to go ahead and bring up the strength of my displacement. Now we have them doing this, and you can play with however much you want to do. You can even make it like the wave being a lot more obvious. I don't want that, so we're going to have it right about here. Big fan of this. See those circles? They're just kind of existing with the displacement. We want them to do their own thing, so it's not entirely like an override. It's just the wave texture that's displacing these guys. So if we play with them, it's just animating on top of it. So it's I don't know, compounding in a way, but they're able to do their own thing because this multiply node is allowing them to go higher. So they're doing their own thing. And so in this case, I'm going to go back to frame 0, and having different settings here on the wave texture is going to give you more variety. So scale, all that fun stuff. Do whatever you'd like, or you can copy my settings. This is what I have here. On the phase offset, I'm going to hit I. I'm going to go to the very end. I'm going to type in 10 asterisk pi I, and then there we go. Now they're doing their own thing. Now, it's very important is to bring all the detail settings down to 0 for the spheres, because what's going to happen is, let's say detail scale at, where are we at? What's going to happen is we have our detail scale at like 10, and then you can bring your detail up a little bit. Watch how they act. Well, that's ridiculous. They're going to be a little bit weird. I'm not really demonstrating it quite properly because I didn't rehearse this, but they're going to kind of like, they're not going to go up and down. They're going to be like that. Like they're going to kind of play with that space rather than being a smooth up and down. That's what I was trying to demonstrate, but I couldn't replicate it in this moment. So that is going to get them a better look. And there we go. That's how we do all this. You'll notice we can see the geometry right here on these spheres. The way you fix that is with a set shade smooth node. Now we need to get some materials on this, and you'll notice, we'll go to material preview here. If I go and just add this whole thing is now clicked. If I just go ahead and add a material, let's make it metallic and make it red. It didn't change anything. Why is that? Well, in geometry nodes, you have to specify which line you want to put materials on. So we have each thing that's going into the join geometry represents a model, right? So we have these models, you have each individual of these models that we made over here. Now, in this case, we could do that, right? We'll just make the materials there. But I really want to show you guys how to do it here in geometry nodes, because it's going to be very valuable as we go farther into this course and as you make your own work as well. So with that being said, the way to do it is with a set material. Now I did mention, hey, you could just add the material to there, right? But you can't do that with this sphere, right? These spheres were generated directly within geometry nodes. So that's why you have to do this sometimes, and which is why I want to show you now. So add the set material node, and then you'll go ahead and we'll zoom in here. Select the material. Now it's selected. Then you can go ahead and hit Shift D, Shift D, Shift D. And then I want to give, let's go ahead and put this one here as well, but I want to give him his own material. So we'll give them that material. And there we go. Now it's a Christmas animation. All right, so now that we're here, let's head over to the shading tab and finish off the material part of this. So now we have this. I want to show you guys a really cool node that helps you control a bunch of different objects, allows you to apply colors to tons of different objects that are instanced in a geometry nodes workspace. So I'm going to go to from slot 2 to slot 1, select this red one, and I'm going to go and get in a color ramp, plug that here. I'm going to want 4 colors. So you can hit this plus icon and add more colors within the color ramp. And then I'm going to go and get a kind of an orangey color. Here we're going to get in I'm just copying from my original design. Get a color here, maybe make it look a little drab. This guy, we're going to make it a darker gray. And this guy, we're going to make it a lighter blue. Here we go. Now we have this. So let's go ahead and get a noise texture. Plug that into the color ramp, and that's going to need to load. Eevee takes time for things to load. But notice now it is mapping this on everything, right? But what I want is to have solid colors, but to be randomly applied to all of these. And you wouldn't even get that control. So if I wanted to add a red color to this guy, well, all of the times that guy's duplicated, he will only be red. I want to have true random choices. And that'll make more sense once we add this next node, which is a object info node. And what he does is he has the ability to recognize, oh, these are all instances. Let me give them a little bit of individuality with the way that we apply the colors here. So if I plug random straight into vector, it will now do that. Look at this. So if I go over here to 4D to show this and play with the W, you see now they have some individuality. And this, I mean, as you can see, opens up a very cool avenue for more animation. Like, for example, let's go, this is an unplanned tangent, but what if you wanted to just have, here's color ramp, if you just wanted them to randomly place emission on these, well, you can do that. You can plug a color ramp into the emission and bring that down here, and we can go to we'll just recreate a constant offset here, and then look at that. And then you can change its color. So that, you know, we have new options available to us. So that is the power of that node. Let's go ahead and focus on this. Now see how it's more than just 4 different colors. It's different shades between those colors. And the way that you can prevent that, I'm going to make this not metallic. The way you can prevent that is preventing these gradients within the actual color ramp. So we'll go from linear to constant, and that is going to give you hard color. Now you've probably heard me mention hard color. I guess it'll make more sense as we go on. But we can bring in the position of these colors to introduce them randomly. And now we have too much blue. All right, here we go. So this is how we are able to randomly apply color to everything. I'm going to go ahead and get my camera. So let's say, what's the front? So Shift A, get our camera, and you can place your camera wherever you want to. I didn't really say what I did there. So I'm gonna hit Shift A, get my camera, Control Alt 0, snap it to view. Here we are. And then we'll click on the camera icon, and I like to do orthographic. So we're gonna do orthographic. And then you can use your orthographic scale to decide where you want it to look. There we go. Nice. Honestly, I want this spheres to go higher, and this is just a personal thing. There we go. There we go. Now they have a much more natural up and down motion, which is what I love. All right, here we go. We're back. Let's go ahead, and I'm going to use cycles to preview how this is looking, just because that's the final render engine for me. And I'm going to bring my roughness down a little bit. I want them to be a little glossy. And then one really fun node that you can introduce to this whole thing is we can go here to the sheen, bring your weight up, then bring your roughness down, and it adds a layer weight effect. And so you can go and add that orange color to everything, or maybe that blue can be applied to everything, and the roughness goes how wide you're able to apply that. So now you can see you can apply this extra bit of color to the whole animation. See how cool that looks? And you can apply that sheen to everything or nothing at all. But I wanted to throw that in there for you if you wanted to add that. I'm going to leave it alone, though in one of my versions of this animation I did that and it looked awesome. All right, I'm going to go to slot 2 where we have this really glossy metal, and let's just bring the roughness up a little bit, and then we'll leave him alone from there. He looks good. All right. Now, all we have left to do is lighting. So the first thing I like to do when it comes to lighting is get one big establishing light to handle my shadows. And that quite often ends up being an HDRI. It's not my main light, it is my supporting light. So what I like to use is Polyhaven, completely free HDRIs. And we'll go to HDRIs, and I'm going to use the Auto Shop. So if I type in Auto Shop, this is really my go-to HDRI, and then 4K EXR, I'm going to download it. So now what we're going to do is click on the world, go from color to environment texture, and then navigate to wherever you saved your HDRI. So now he's implemented here, looks nice. I'm going to bring the strength down to like 0.5, cut it in half, so we have just a simple establishing light. And then we're going to go ahead and get an area light and just get a soft light to be in the middle, as emphasis. So I'm going to hit G, move him over here like this. I'm hitting G and middle click to move it around. Here in the light settings, we're going to go from a square, and we'll see that happen. And we're going to go from a square to a disc. Bring my power to like 6,000, just so we can watch it happen. But clearly that's too bright. Let's do 1,000. And then I'm going to point it directly in the middle where my scene is happening, where my camera is pointing. And I'm hitting R twice to rotate where my camera is. But what I'm going to do now is bring my spread down. See that? So he needs to be higher, like that. Cool. So now we can really pinpoint where we want the highlight of this to be. And then spread makes a really hard edge, and then you can bring your scale up like this. So this is where you can very much needle point where you want your lighting to be, and then bring your spread to gradient that out. And then you can bring your power down to however you like it to be, right? And then this HDRI can even this out. I'm going to go from AGX here in the color management to Filmic to get some brighter colors, look to high contrast, and then you can bring that exposure down. And now you have a really nice looking scene. Of course, it's very blown out here in AGX, so to fix that, I like the vibrance that Filmic gets you, but AGX, this will be an ongoing battle for sure in my comments. Here we go. So this is our really nice, fun animation. We're here. It looks nice. It looks clean. It looks fun. I'm a huge fan of it. For this one, I would strongly encourage here in the little camera icon, turn on your motion blur. And then we have my bounces here set to 1. That's great. Samples at 300. And I'm going to click on this button here and denoise it. And then just so we can quickly see the denoising, I'm going to turn it on for the render. I'm going to render it just to see how one frame of this looks. And here we have it. This is what our animation is going to look like. We have nice reflections. We have good materials. We have some motion blur. Everything here looks awesome. This is probably one of my favorite animations in the whole course. I think it looks just really fun and usable, especially with the graphic design context. With that being said, that is it. This was a hefty one. Definitely just absolutely gnarly in the geometry nodes, but it was what it needed to be. With that being said, I'm gonna close off this lesson here, and we're gonna move on to the next one. Hope you got some stuff out of this. This was a hefty one again, but a lot to learn here. I would encourage watching this one a couple times if this one was really tough. But with that being said, see you in the next one.